Welcome back once again to the Driven Leadership Podcast, everybody. Today is a very special episode. And honestly, it's an episode that we should have done a while ago because we talk about bold constantly. And I know, at least for myself, speak to it with the expectation that everybody knows what we're talking about. But today, we're going to talk about bold with the assumption that no one knows what we're talking about. But, you know, bold, like university athletics, which we had a whole episode dedicated to, bold is one of the cornerstones of what we do at Driven as far as leadership development. So we have leadership development, organizational development, and university athletics. So we'll get to organizational development as its own podcast. But as far as leadership development, bold is the kind of the pinnacle of what we do. Like I said, it's the cornerstone. And so I want to walk through much kind of like that very first episode we did where we talked about the history of Driven. I want to walk through bold a little bit systematically where we kind of lay out as much as we can what it is, what's the mindset behind it and how it was built, and then kind of dig into some of the big results that we've seen and why are we so confident that this is such a transformational program for the hundreds and thousands of people that have gone through and graduated. So with that in mind, Mary, Eric, where do you feel like we should start this conversation talking about bold, bringing people into the fold?
You got this, Eric. You're going to get a complete different viewpoint on bold, which makes it. This is why it makes it so good.
Yes.
Okay. So let me give the deeper history of bold versus it being where Mary and Eric picked up, right? Okay. So some of this has been told to me. I don't actually know all the details of it, but here's the baseline. So after World War II, that's where this starts. Okay.
What?
So
Day
after
one,
World
June
War
17,
II,
1942.
Japan was looking to re-establish their everything. Right, they've been ripped apart by us after World War II, and they had a huge vacancy in leadership of companies, leadership of initiatives, just to put the country back together. And they actually developed a month-long training that was built around process and around helping people develop and to grow. And quite frankly, I don't know the name of it. I don't know the background. This is kind of what I was told from the people that we learned how to do this stuff from.
Mm-hmm.
And but it was highly experiential and really got people to dig in and question who they are, where they're going, how they execute, and getting tons of feedback. And there was a methodology and a psychology that combined with psychologists was developed coming out of that. And they developed a shorter version that was about a week long. And they came over to the United States and started, this is years later, started using all this. And it was a company that was coming around doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And Mary and I met at a leadership development company that did some amazing work. I mean, they had and still have trainings that used the backbone was this methodology from this week-long training that they brought over to the United States that was process-based, heavily feedback oriented, putting people in challenging situations and enabling them to kind of process themselves through it.
Yeah.
And so, so they took that and one of the people that designed, there were two people in there that took that training and several other trainings. And also one of them had a military background. And they kind of combined all of those into one was a psychologist and the other was the military. And they'd done all these trainings and they pulled them all together and put a 2-day process-driven, feedback-driven, challenge-driven program.
Yeah.
But they used the psychology of this Japanese training and kind of the ebbs and flows and how it worked. And and Mary and I met working for that company. Okay. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the backstory. There's years of psychology and kind of how it all works. And what Mary and I learned at that company was a large range of things. We ran parts of the company. We had an opportunity to potentially buy the company. There was all these things that were going on. We both learned to be trainers for them. We're doing sales. We're doing all this. But the biggest thing that we took away, or I took away, I should say at the time, was they actually had a couple of neuroscientists that came in and studied the training, studied the underbelly of why it worked and what was going on. and they were blown away. These neuroscientists are like, this isn't possible, because getting true long-term behavioral change, getting somebody to actually do something different for the long haul consistently and repetitively, never been done over a 2-day period. If you take a long period of time. So there's two ways to change human behavior. One is deep emotional impact, and the other is through repetition, at least proven, documented, scientific. So what this training was doing, what most learning is repetition. That's what school is. We go in, we learn something, and then we do homework, and we repeat the assignment from a different direction, and we're doing it. And then, somewhere down the road, we're supposed to remember it because we repeated it enough, and we do.
Yeah.
However, the real radical shift, the real radical behavior, and this is where these neuroscientists are sitting there, and they're like, what you're doing is you're helping people create new habits and behaviors right there on the spot quickly through emotional impact, because they feel while they're going through the training. It's challenging. They feel stress and pressure. They feel excitement. They feel these things, and they feel them at a deep level. And so therefore, they're actually able to change behavior quickly. And so Mary and I fell in love with it. We met each other. We fell in love with it. We fell in love with what was going on. And most importantly, we fell in love with the results that were taking place as people were leaving this training.
Yeah.
And yet the training was based and formulated in the late 70s and 80s is when it was created, and times in society had changed. And we were going, man, we think the training should change. Not the underbelly, not the carriage of what's going on, not what makes it work, which were laced into that Japanese training and other things that were going on.
Yeah.
But the actual way it's going about it doesn't necessarily seem to fit. And we were in a place where we were like, okay, we're going to go do this on our own. We're going to do it differently, or we're going to work for this company and just kind of suck it up and do it the way it is, even though we think they're missing something.
Sure.
And so still love those people. They're amazing. Nothing negative to say about how they do the training. We just had a little different vision about how to do it. So we took the underbelly, the thing that we'd learned, that Japanese, the psychology, the things that are going on, the things that we learned from the neuroscientists, the psychologists that sat in it. And we spent hours learning from them as it was going along. And we went, okay, we're going to take all that, and we're going to take changing, but some core processes that go along with it that we got from different places. And we're going to bring all those together, and we're going to launch a training that is modern, that is behavioral change, that's going to get people not to lead the way we tell them to lead. We're going to get people to discover who they are as a leader, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are. And this is the key, because if people buy into why they should change becomes easy.
Yeah.
If I go,
that's the biggest hurdle.
Right. If I want to change, and I believe this change is for the good, and it's important to me, like really important to me, I'm going to change.
Yeah.
And that's why, that's why someone can go through a big life event. Maybe it's the birth of a child. And they're like, you know what? I've been living my life a certain way, but I'm going to be the dad or mom that this child deserves. I'm changing my ways from this point on. It's a major emotional event, and you can shift like that because you make a decision, you choose it, and you go after it. So the training is designed, it's probably way off track from what you want, but you can cut and splice this however you want to, but the training is designed to first and foremost have people actually see where they are, not through what we tell them, but through them going through process and actually getting to see where they succeed, where they fail, where they struggle, all those things. And as they do that, they get to make the choice of going, well, I really want to work on that because it's going to pay off if I do. And they evaluate and discover, where are they strong, where are they weak, and what am I going to work on? So that when they walk out, they're a better leader, a better version of who they want to be. That's what the training is. So it's built in, way more than 50 years worth of psychology and science and tens of thousands of trainings around this method and what's going on. This is just another iteration of this particular type of training that creates long-term results in a modern way. And so that was the long history. That's where it came from.
Yeah.
So it's not Mary and Eric sitting around, around the kitchen table going, hey, I like this process.
Seeing what would work best. Yeah.
Man, it is some incredible processes we experienced. But go ahead. Yeah.
So Dale Cohn experience theory goes to this piece that people will remember, if it's important to them, 10% of what they read, 20% of what they hear, 30% of what they see, 50% of what they hear and see. Now, when they start to discuss, and it's important, and they talk about it, about 70%, once you have a deep emotional experience and you're talking, you're seeing it, you're sharing it, it has a stickiness of about 95% when it's important to you. Yeah. And bold, hands down, because it has all of it. You read it, you see it, you hear it, you talk about it, you share, you have this deep emotional experience. And our whole philosophy has also had to be empowering, that it wasn't happening to somebody. Yeah. Because in the older days, it was, and we'll tell people it has a little bit of a boot campish feel, especially at first. Yeah. But when people are in a fight, flight, when they're terrified, nothing goes in. They just remember that they're fearful. And so now they're in protective survival mode. And so we shifted immediately, well, pretty quickly into, we want to keep them comfortable with being uncomfortable, but not in the panic zone, so that they're willing to stretch, they're willing to go, okay, and they feel safe within it. And it's empowering to where Eric's saying is they're choosing it. They get to see, well, who am I? Sometimes maybe they forget, but it's like a light switch goes on, and it's they're owning their ideas, they're owning their voice, they're owning their piece as they see the gap, and they're doing the work to what they can control.
That answers that question. No, it's good. We can like literally we could. So I want to make sure I'm answering the specific questions that you want to know. Like,
no, I mean, I think that covered like, the general history and kind of like the mindset behind it. So I kind of want to move into like, because whenever we talk about it and whenever we market it, it's difficult to discuss because we don't talk about it in detail. And I just want to address that. Like, why do we have this shroud, for lack of a better word, behind the practical, like, this is what you're going to do, these are the chapter titles and these are the processes, the names of them? What's the purpose behind kind of letting people show up with limited information?
We don't want people to come in with planned behavior. And one of the reasons why it works so well is that when you don't know and you walk into a process, we want you to see, how do you typically respond? How do you respond to stress, pressure, change? How do you respond to failure? How do you respond to success? How do you respond to difficult people? How do you respond in any of these situations? If you come in and you know every process, then you're already coming with this expectation and this planned behavior. The power is when you just jump into something and you get to discover and uncover this really cool piece of you. And it's not, and I always look at it like a movie, right? You don't want to tell people the end of the movie, because a lot of times people are like, well, why would I want to go? And often if people knew all of the processes, they're thinking, well, what does this have to do with leadership, or why would I want to do that? And as you go through the entire process, every process builds on top of each process. And you'll hear trust the process, because it doesn't make sense in it as a single, but it comes together as an entirety that you couldn't have one without the other.
Yeah. You know, adding to that, so absolutely is we don't want planned behavior in there. The person taking it doesn't want planned behavior. They just think they do. But and there's a couple other layers to it. So leadership takes place. Leadership's happening all the time. Defining leadership is about influence, right? How do I influence? And we could not even say a word and walk in a room and influence that room to either be a better meeting or a worse meeting. Like we can do all sorts of things just by our presence and how we show up. Definitely by what we say and by the actions that we take. And so when we're talking about influence and how we influence, when things are going well, pretty easy, to be a great leader, to be a positive influence. I'm having a good day. I started with a great cup of coffee. I walked into the office. We're making money. Everything's going great. And I walk around and I go up to people and I go, hey, you're doing a good job. it's super easy to be a leader at that point.
Yeah, right.
Leadership really counts when it hits the fan. Leadership counts when, I'm running a business and maybe the money's not there right now and the team's underperforming and this is going on and that's going on. And I've got to somehow get in there and right this ship and move it in the right direction and influence under extreme pressure.
Yeah.
And so we find that the pressure has massive value on you working on your real behavior. So we want real pressure. Well, what's one of the best pressures possible? Not knowing what to expect, not knowing what's next, And so literally you'll be halfway through the training and you're just sitting there and you're like, all right, it's been tough so far. God, what's coming next? And you're feeling it. But in that thought process, you're learning.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How do I handle stress and pressure? How do I handle the unknown? How can I be prepared for what there's no way to prepare for? So all I can be prepared in is my mental focus, my mental attitude. Do I believe I can or I can't? It's showing up over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And so, we always say the training actually starts when somebody signs up for it, not when they show up for us. Because you sign up for this thing and you're like, what the hell did I sign up for?
Yeah. Yeah.
The hardest thing about Bold, quite frankly, on our end is how do we talk about this? How do we market it? How do we get it out there? It has these ridiculously amazing outcomes.
Yeah.
But you go, hey, it's going to be hard. It feels a little bit like a boot camp. We're not going to tell you what you're getting into. Hey, just trust us.
Yeah. You're going to get so comfortable with being uncomfortable. Well, no, I like my comfort zone.
Yeah. It is like marketing, like, hey, come to this pool. We're going to throw you in the deep end. You'll love it. Trust us.
Okay. But I don't know how to swim. Like,
yeah, exactly.
You're just going to let me.
Well, and then you get some people that are one of the things I love about Bold is it's the great leveler. Yeah. We've had high military officers that have taken ridiculous amounts of training. Navy SEALs have taken the training. High bird colonel, all this stuff. And
scientists, researchers.
Scientists.
We had a gal from Switzerland.
Yeah, that research. Yeah. But you name it, right? And we're just using that. But high Fortune 100 people have been through it. Political officer, like all these different people. And by the way, I don't even call this other end of the spectrum, but different careers. Stay-at-home mom and dads have gone through it.
Artists,
and preschool teachers.
Yeah.
So. And why? Because we're talking about leadership and we're talking about influence, which is universal. Behavior becomes universal. But people before they're going to this training. It starts when they sign up and they'll start to have imposter syndrome. They'll start to question whether they're a leader. They're like, why am I going here? This is for business. The business people are like, why am I going here? This seems personal development.
I'm really good with where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I'm comfortable.
It's not the right time. Well, that's what I wanted to talk about is like because I don't know if I've ever heard us talk about it in that spectrum of like business people think it's too personal people think it's too business oriented. Mm-hmm. How does all this relate together as far as is it personal development? Is it business development? How does all of this tie in to leadership, these processes that y'all are talking about?
So leadership is personal, and when we're in or they're in Bold, they're looking at who they are. Yet leadership has so many different roles and elements in our life. And so what we do is we're working with the individual. And as a result, we're tying in the business. We're tying in the personal. It's not an and. A lot of times within business, you get the skill, personal growth. You get sometimes not the feelers, but you dig deep, and in Bold you get both. So you're looking within, you're taking that 100% look in the mirror, but at the same time you're figuring out what it means to build a team, how to give feedback, how to support. You're connected to a why. All of these different things are happening within a skill set, which translates into business as well as your personal life.
Yeah. Real life example, right? So somebody's going to have a meeting at work. Okay. And there's a spectrum here that you got somebody that walks in and they're terrified to hold the meeting. Their confidence isn't there. They don't believe they can do it. And the internal battle that's taking place. They may know the information on what to present in the meeting, but how they present it, how they talk to people, how they connect with people, how they bring their audience in because their confidence or self-doubt or whatever's taking place, we'll put that at one end of the spectrum. Okay. And what do they need to work on to deliver a better meeting? Do they need the structure of a meeting? Maybe they do. Maybe there's some type of structure and analytical kind of, if you did step 1 and step 2, those are out there for sure. This is much more battling. What's really going on? What are those thoughts? What's taking place and how to shift those so that you walk in that room and it's not false confidence. It's confidence. It is, I've got this and I can step into it. So that's one end. And now you go the other end, right? It's arrogance. It is, I can't believe I even have to give this meeting. These people should already know this. And they're wondering why they can't connect with their team and why they're not getting engagement within their culture and why, people aren't coming to them with creative ideas or not coming to them at all. And it's because they've got this persona that is so larger than life that they just believe they're, and I'm going extreme with that. There's all different variations of this and there's combinations of both. Yeah. A lot of times that arrogance is really just an opposite end of the spectrum to cover up insecurity. Yeah. So, but when you start getting into, and we're not going backwards, we're not psychologists, we're not going, why did your arm fall off when you were 10? And that's not it. Here's where you are. Where do you want to go? What's the gap and the barriers and the walls that are holding you back from getting there? And they're going to show up in this process. Throughout Bold, you're going to hit, we say it in the beginning of the training, you're going to hit your walls. You're going to hit those barriers that hold you back. And while you're going to be getting feedback, you're going to be learning how to give feedback. You're going to be working with different personalities. You're going to learn leadership and execution. You're doing all that stuff. But the underbelly of this, the psychology of it, if you want to call it, going back to that training that was derived from, is getting down to the root of what holds you back from greatness. What is that thought process, those things that are going on that when you get there and you're about to crush it, for whatever reason it doesn't. We talk about it in Bold, but we talk about it in other trainings because it's just such an impactful story. There's a coach out there named Paul Asante. Paul Asante, I think he's still the winningest coach in NCAA history for most consecutive wins, right? And he went to teach tennis, be a tennis coach at Trinity College, which I believe is a D3 school. And he went to go do that. And they said, hey, while you're doing that, we need a squash coach because we don't have one. Will you go teach squash, which apparently is a real sport. It's racquetball and like tennis combined. Yeah. It's not just a vegetable or fruit or whatever that is. But so he goes, sure, I'll take it on. But he didn't know squash. So he took a completely different mindset and he went in there and he goes, I'm going to work with these players from the start on their fears and the things that hold them back from success. And we're going to start from that point and we'll learn the sport together. Yeah. And he started working on their fears and he started developing them and understanding the thought process, got in the mental side and won 13 national titles back to back without losing a game.
It was like 263 matches or games in a row, 13 NCAA titles.
So, and I just tell that story because it's so much. We want to go crush it in life and leadership, being a role model. We talk about being a champion in Bold. We talk about, and we don't mean the winner. We mean the one that is truly setting the tone, a value driven, make a difference, care but is strong, hold the line type of leader. They'll go run straight into the toughest situations with confidence and belief and influence everyone to move in that direction. So you go back to the business example. Business is struggling. Yeah. What do they need? They need somebody to right that ship and come in. And whether it's all the right decisions or not, they're coming in and they're doing it in a way that shows care and emotional intelligence and empathy, but also strength and direction and guidance in the storm. Yeah. And when a leader shows up that way and they know how to dial it in one direction or another, those are all personal things.
But so too, what Eric's talking about, the business leader, you go through that class, and a lot of times business leaders are crushing it in the company, yet they don't have the balance. They just go, and they're not aware sometimes that they're leaving people behind or the expectations, and because they're so go mindset, and sometimes even within that, they're seeing the people, we do an exercise where, without giving it away, people in the back, right? People who are just within conflict, they're just, yes, whatever, I don't want to rock the boat, but they're pulling ideas. They're figuring out how to look at their people in their life, in business and personal life, to get their ideas, to pull them in, to get them more engaged, to spark confidence. We talk about that leader sometimes who, yes, they lead from the front. And a lot of times business owners are leading from the front. They're taking the hill, but sometimes they need to learn to lead from the back. How do they empower other people, give them their voice, support their ideas and initiatives, and give them the chicken wing? Yeah. Hey, I see you. And it's not just about me. It's about we. What are you laughing about?
Well, I'm like, I don't know if people know what give them the chicken wing is. Oh, we're taking them to KFC. It's like she means give them the nudge. For those that don't know, give them the nudge to kind of step in. Yeah.
Yeah. But and then as a result, they come across more connected to their people. They will do sit downs. They will ask who they are, what's important to them. They literally come alongside them and pull them in. Yeah. Over and over and over and over. Every company we work with, there is significant growth. There is alignment in their leadership. There's alignment. So not just the business, because they're aligned within themselves. They have that checkup. And the plus side is the home life gets more balanced. Yeah. And you see people both sides. It's like you get high level leaders that are running, and then there's a gap. You get home mom and dads that are running here, but there's a gap. Mm-hmm. We close the gap, or they close the gap.
That's awesome. So as we kind of wrap up, I think we've really I want to talk about it so much more. But
well, I think we do. I think there's more to talk about.
I think this is a really good intro to like what is it? What's the process? Kind of what to expect. I think the last thought I want to leave with is what happens after Bold. 2.5 days is such a short period of time. Either, and y'all can take this whichever way you want to, either what's the best thing someone can do from leaving Bold, or what have you seen is common to happen to people once leaving Bold? What's the aftermath of all this?
It depends. It depends on the way people process. So first and foremost, it takes about 2 weeks to truly process the class. It is a fire hose coming at you. You're immersed in this process, and you walk out going, woo, the lights are on. People want to take action. And then they walk into life going, how do I do all of this? Yeah. And we always say to people, first and foremost, if you can rest, give yourself a day or two to rest. Mm-hmm. Journal, write down thoughts, write down some of the things that you learned, because it helps you process. We do a follow-up with them that is, for us, is non-negotiable, because it helps connect the dots. If they have people in their companies who have gone, we encourage the leadership to sit down with the people to help them debrief. What did you learn? What are some of your ahas? How does this even apply here? Or like, so you're helping them debrief. And then we do a 4-week follow-up with them that is connecting them back to some of the lessons. We connect them back with accountability groups. But that's the hardest part. Bold isn't the hardest part. And we tell people say, it's one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. The hardest part is what you do with it afterwards, because our habits, our routines, our patterns are there. Yeah. We do everything we can to give them the tools to set them up to have accountability, to have, the Zoom calls, to have the lessons. We're doing now webinars every month. Yet it's ultimately, they also have to step up and do the work.
Yeah. I just added, it's a pain pleasure thing. So when you go through Bold, you become aware of places where you're crushing it, places where you got to improve. We already talked about that. And the reality is, and Bold has the ability to do this, you really get to feel when you're not performing. When I'm coming home at night with no energy and I'm not there for my kids, or I'm going into work every day and I'm not really connected because I'm not highly engaged, like, you're going to see it and you're going to feel it. And as you do that, people get very attached, and there's meaning behind it. And when there's big meaning, that means when I don't do this, there's big pain. And so you walk out, and if it's painful enough, you'll shift the behavior, because and it's going to be right in front of you. If I'm not spending enough time with my little girl when I come home from work and I'm always detached from all those things, I'm now seeing it, because before I was kind of numb to it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or if I'm at work and I can see my team is disconnected and I'm not leading them well, it's going to be right in my face. I'm aware of it. But if you're like, I see it, but you don't take action on it, you'll slowly drift back to numbness. So you got to take action on it. When you come out, you need to, it's funny. You asked the question. My first response was, you need to sleep for a couple of days, like for real.
Yeah.
And it's part of it's processing and part of it's just catching up, because you get sleep there, but not a crazy amount. But it also just recharge, have energy, feel ready. And then when you go in, you're going to have this awareness. You're going to be processing new information. There's more happening after Bold than happened in Bold. And so we support that we have one-on-one coaching calls when you leave. And then we also have currently it's 4 group coaching calls, and we're working on even expanding that, because that's a repetition. Yeah. So you got to get in and practice, pick your biggest takeaways, which we help you do, meaning we process you and ask questions on that, but your biggest takeaways. And then you create habits and routines right there. And then you just do them over and over as much as you can. And you get lasting change.
Yeah. And we focus on what we call the 1%. So it's the little tiny things. So people walk out, and I hear this over and over. They have all these big epiphanies and they just want to tackle on the world. And it becomes so overwhelming, because they're not just taking a bite of an elephant, one bite at a time, right? They're taking the elephant going, let's go. And it's so we get them focused on, ever. I know, but
I love it.
So it's, what do you want? And now what's your 1%? What are the little tiny behaviors that you can do that are in your control that will help? When you do that consistently, will move the needle. And everything we're doing in our follow-up is we get them clear on their 1%. In fact, there's this analogy I talk about with Simon Sinek, how he was looking at his life, and he takes these marbles, and at the end of each week, he takes his marble out of one jar and he says, am I proud of how I showed up today? And or this week, did I live my best life? He'll put in the other jar. So we talk about this. One of our students said she took the analogy per day. And so she has 2 jars. She has these marbles. She got 40 of them, but she's giving herself, grading herself on the 1%. So she's looking at her goal, but it's the 1%. Yeah. Did I do my 1% today? Because that's easy. And that easy creates more want to do more work. And now when I know that, hey, I'm working on discipline, and I said I was going to clean my house, but my 1% might be, I'm just going to take the laundry out of this basket today. I'm going to fold it and put it away. So it's the 1% that we do day in and day out that creates lasting change. And that's what we're really big at, helping our students get into, the little things that create the big things.
Yeah. Amazing. This has helped a lot in order to contextualize Bold, hopefully for those of you listening that are being sent to Bold or just looking for more information. The answer is, you're not going to get it. Just trust us. Just come. Yeah. That's good. No, I think we're going to do definitely some follow-up on this, because we also have Forge, which is one of our advanced programs in the same mechanism you were saying, of all this stuff. So yeah, it is one of the, we have so many testimonials. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can go check them out, of people who will corroborate the evidence of this being a life-changing program. So check it out. Go learn more at drivenleadership.com. Email us, call us, mail us, send us a letter.
DM.
Yeah, DM us. That's the modern day equivalent. So no, you're good. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week. Thanks, guys.